All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is a little study session that we are doing on the annual disclosure and submission confirmation from the city. This is through our Dearborn Heights treasurer, Lisa Hicks Clayton, and then we also have one of the representatives from PFM, which helped put this together, Mr. Paul Stoddard. There he is, and. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to get started with our city treasurer. Just giving us just an abbreviation on this, and I know you had some comments you want to make, and then we'll go ahead and go into some of the questions that some of us have.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening.
First, I want to say thank you for being flexible with your timing for this evening. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. We're here tonight to discuss and answer any questions that the council body, as well as residents, might have in regards to the annual disclosure, which is a report that is due each year. We do it in December because it has to be completed 6 months after the conclusion of the fiscal year. So December is a month that we do a lot of annual reports. You only do them once, but you have that in front of you along with some backup information. I gave you a cover letter and wanted to share that with you ahead of time. So I believe it's posted as well on the city's website for our residents, for transparency's sake. And this evening we have Paul Stoddard with us, and Paul's somewhere, I don't know where he is.
He's on
there
Zoom.
You are you? Yes, sir. I'm glad Paul's here. His staff is wonderful. They work with us every year and creating the annual disclosure. They will ask for information from the treasurer's office, and as you can see, I made notes. In fact, the original copies I shared with you that was on your council agenda, when you moved it to a study session, I have these little stars showing you what kind of information and what it's about. But I know Mr. Stoddard can share more information based on your questions, but I just wanted to say that, again, this is an annual report. It was submitted December 27th. It has to be done by the 31st of December each year, so it was done on time. And we did make a modification, which is allowed under the law, after I had discussed it with Department of Treasury. I always make sure I call those fine folks in Lansing and get advisement on how to proceed, and we followed those instructions, made an amendment because we knew one of the information numbers was not accurate. We did not have access to it, but what you have before you is correct, and what came before you that evening for your meeting was correct as well. If you look at page 2 of 7, what I will point out for you is your top 20 business taxpayers on the bottom. If you see that, it says major taxpayers. I always think that's interesting because you can, page 2 of 7 on the very bottom, it says major taxpayers. It's your last heading.
That's what I was looking for.
And you can see your top 20. I made a note of that next to it, starting with Detroit Edison, then the Heights, which is the plaza, the shopping plaza on Ford Road. Then you can go on down the list and see, and these are based on our tax records. If you go to page 3 of 7, this is where your tax levies and collections are listed. And again, keep in mind this is for the 21 tax year. Not this current year, because obviously we're not finished with this tax year. So this is for 21. But you can see what our total levy was, which is a little over 33 million. You can see the next column over says dollar amount. That's actually what your city treasurer's office collected, was 30 million, a little over 30, a little under 31. But, you know, let's move on. It gives you a percentage, which was 93.05% is what your city treasurer's office collected. And then, as we know, your last day to pay at your city is February 28th. So March 1st, we roll the tax rolls right on over to Wayne County for collections. So when you look at the column there, it says dollar amount of 32 million. You see that amount? That is actually what Wayne County collected, brought us up to. Not the total amount they collected, but the difference, right? So this is the total amount we ended up collected, which
I'm sorry, you saw page 2 or page 3?
I'm on page 3.
Row 7 on the bottom.
On the bottom,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
But you'll see the total last percentage column gives us a total percentage collected of 97.53%. So.
That's a combination of both the county and us?
Yes, it is. So that's not horrible. It is down just a little bit, though. Just a little bit, every bit matters.
Good job.
Which is why, but what I want to tell you, and I hope to see this before the council in the future, we talked about the My Half program. Because there are residents that are struggling to pay their taxes. And I think as a government body, elected body like yourselves, I know you care about the residents as well as being the stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. You can appreciate a program like that to help our residents, but also get our taxes collected.
Can I ask a quick question? Yeah. I've got a quick question for you. Thank you so much for coming out here tonight, but some of the things that I've heard on the MyHap, and I'm not sure if they're accurate or not, but one of them is that if taxpayers were delinquent on their water bill, that the water would be shut off under MyHap.
Yeah, that's not correct. We've actually verified that's not correct. In fact, I'm really excited. The company that you, as a council body, approved to help us with the ARPA funds and distribution, we met with them last week, and they asked me, they said, why aren't you doing MyHap? And I brought that up because I heard that, as you did, right? And they go, that's not true. And as far as reporting, that's not true. We had a concern about the amount of admin work that would go with that. That the people, this is somebody from Indiana who runs the program in the state of Indiana, said that was, and you were on there, weren't you? That wasn't true. So we're excited because we're going to be meeting on Thursday to talk about that again. And I really hope we're able to bring that across the finish line for our residents. So, good question.
Do we have the actual man or woman power to be able to assist these individuals? Because that was another concern that.
Yep. Same, very good. So that goes back to the back-end admin side. Right now, your treasurer's office already admins the SCR funds, which is the state emergency relief. We already get water payments and support from the state. So this is adding to it, and I do have the staff do it. Actually, I met with my staff today and discussed this. So we are on board and ready to go, and I did reach out. Her last name is Pierre. Can't think of her first name, forgive me, with the My Half program, one of the key administrators in Lansing. I said, I'd like to have you come in and sit down with us and train my staff and make sure we're doing this correctly. But we're ready, all hands on deck to do this program.
Treasurer Hicks Clayton.
Yes, sir.
How do you go about vetting these people to make sure that they really are eligible for these funds? Because, I'm sure there's people out there trying to get it that really don't deserve it, and those that really need it are not being able to get it because other people are.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is, we don't do the vetting. It falls to the MyHap program, which the administrators are through MISHDA, so the Michigan Housing Development Authority. All right, so they do all the vetting. So it's their approval process. So that takes a lot of that off of us.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, but let's go back. Any other questions? Because I do want you to have your questions on the annual disclosure answered. I mean, Mr. Stoddard joined us today. Thank you, sir, for joining us this evening. We appreciate them very much. You also have the actual agreement that we have. That's the last part of your packet. But I think I don't have anything else to add unless you have questions, or Mr. Stoddard, if you'd like to comment. Is his mic on?
Paul, yeah, Paul's on Zoom. Paul, go ahead. If you could just give us a little bit of a perspective from your side, and just anything, through yourself doing this and then working with the treasurer, the controllers, et cetera, if there was anything that you felt was something that the city needs to focus on a little bit more to just keep us going in the right direction, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm pausing because the internet connection is a little bit unstable.
Yeah, but we can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So the.
Oh, I guess not. Wait, I'm sorry, you got cut off. You just said so, and then you got cut off. So let's start again, please.
Issues bonds in the public market.
Wait, I'm sorry. We only got the word so, and everything else was cut off. So can you start from the beginning again? I'm sorry.
I can. I was having trouble hearing Lisa when she was speaking because of the intermittent. But the city issues bonds in the public market periodically to finance projects, libraries, development projects, water, sewer, and the like. And when it does, it prepares a prospectus, an offering statement. And that statement includes a lot of the information that Lisa was reviewing with you. At the time,
Wait,
I have a message from
Can't
somebody
say.
on there that just said, hey, Mo.
they entered into. an
wait.
agreement.
After the words reviewing with you, you got cut off. I apologize. Wait,
I
one
believe it's
second. Go ahead.
Angela that's on there said, hey, Mo, I'll let you know that the audio sucks. It's cutting out horribly, thanks. I had to share verbatim.
The audio beep. Thank you. Okay, so the audio is bad. I may get you to repeat, unfortunately, some sentences, unfortunately, but go ahead, sir.
But they can't hear us either,
Who can't hear you?
Bless you.
the residents.
Oh, residents can't hear. Vince, are you able to come on? I can see Vince on there. Or Fire Chief, can you hear us? Can you hear? Yeah, Vince can hear. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, sir, I'm sorry.
Okay, so when bonds are issued, a lot of that financial information is published for the benefit of the investor. But when the city does those issuances of bonds, the purchaser is not always the last holder. The bonds trade to other investors in the marketplace. And so investor number two would like updated information. So at the time that the city does their bond issuances, it agrees to provide annual updates and put it out on a website where it can be accessed by investors. As was indicated, that has to happen once per year. At about the time that the audit report is released, the operators and so on are updated and then put into that website so that investors can get after it.
Okay. Any questions for Paul?
Yeah, not questions for Paul, but I have one for her, to our treasurer. And I don't know if this is part of this meeting or not, and if I'm not, I'm gonna apologize, and you correct me right away, okay? And we can stop talking about it.
That sounds
When I
scary.
look back through the financials, okay, and I see like restricted funds and general funds and things of that nature, and I see like there's, as of the last day, was that June 31st or July of 2021?
Well, the end of the fiscal year was June 30th of 22 for
Yes.
last fiscal year.
So then we get another report as of December, 6 months later, correct?
I don't know which report. You're getting monthly reports from me on your restricted funds.
But I'm talking about all general. When we got the budget come to us, budget approval, and then we saw that. But my question is, I see sometimes like, I'm gonna pick Act 345.
Okay.
Where there was 2,800,000, I think, left over from the year before, okay? Now, that doesn't show what we collected through the next 6 months, right?
Right.
Okay, so how do we go about seeing that, and when do we reconcile to the general fund what we pay? And who
Okay.
does that? How does it get posted?
I think that's a dual question, is it, or dual answer? Dual department, which we work together. All right, your comptroller and your treasurer works together. I will tell you, because of this council body's action of a resolution, which we appreciate, by the way, and thank you for that, we separate those restricted funds that are levies, like Act 345, are separated at point of entry. So and this, and sorry, Paul, hang on, because this doesn't have that much to do with disclosure, but we separate it at the point of entry. So when you, let's say, Mr. Councilman Wenzel pays just taxes, summer taxes, which again, your municipal taxes are only on your summer taxes, right? Not on your winter, but only on your summer, okay? You pay your summer taxes, and when you write your check or however you pay, you give that to the cashier, or if you pay online, it's automatically separated. So your Act 345, to answer your question directly, is in a restricted bank account. It is restricted, it's in your general ledger. Right? Those are reconciled. We work together. If there's a question, the comptroller asks me, we talk frequently. We work through different issues. But to tell you and answer you, that is already separated. We already know how much we collected. And if we over collect, then we know.
So where do we see that? Where do we see that?
Well, that is, where you see that is on your monthly report that you get from me. Per the charter.
Okay, so now when.
It's also going to be, I was going to say, your actual to budget, actual numbers to budget, you're going to see it there as well. So there's your check and balance, and that's the purpose of these two departments too.
Well, this is what I want to get to. So the comptroller's office tells you what to post, correct?
No.
How does that work now? We've got.
Okay, if I could interrupt you for a second.
It's a
If
separate
everybody in the audience is going to talk, I'm going to bother you guys if you don't mind to come up to the podium, because
Yeah.
then otherwise
I'll
people
let
on
you
Zoom
take
can't
that,
hear you.
That's you.
Apologize.
Okay, so it's the opposite. The money will come into the treasurer's office, then it gets sent to the comptroller department, and then the comptroller department will post it into BS&A. So that's what you will see on your budget to actual, the money that's coming out of the Act 345
Okay,
account.
So for those not familiar with it, either in the, well, at least on the council, that's the one that we received via email from the controllers. They had, if you recall, the percentages,
Yes.
40%, 60%,
Yes.
70%, et cetera. Go ahead.
And you will be getting another one for December. It's a little behind because there were a couple of the general ledger numbers that I wanted to check to make sure that they were posted to the right accounts. And they just went out to the directors asking questions because some of the accounts were over budget, and I wanted them to respond back to tell me what they want to do, because I obviously have to amend the budget.
Accounts are over budget?
Yes, some of the accounts are over budget, so they need to clarify where they want me to get that money to amend the budget. So that will be up to the directors.
Okay. I just, that was a question I had, and wanted to know who does the posting of what to where, so when we see it, we know that the money's received and it's being posted on the ledger, that's the actual, what's in the actual account.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I was just going to add, this is why these two departments work together. They're your finance team. Along with the chief of staff has been very helpful with recommendations and guidance and facilitating. So we are trying to accomplish those tasks that need to be handled or improved upon, because we know that. We're fully aware of that. But again, by separating those bank accounts and separating that at point of entry when it's paid, we know when you get your monthly report from me what's in the bank. Remember, your treasurer's office is about what's in the bank account, the money, the cash. The comptrollers, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but they're the booking side. Your general ledger up to making sure the books are done. And we together have to reconcile. And if something's off, Comptroller King would let me know, and we would meet, discuss, and we work through it. And yes, there are things that have to be corrected, and we change.
Okay, but the question again is, when we pay something out of general fund for a restricted fund, when do we get that reimbursement back?
Those are interfunds you're talking about.
When do we put that back into the general fund?
So, and that's going to be the comptroller again, come on up. Because you're talking about interfunds now, because we do. We pay, payroll is a perfect example of that. Payroll is paid out of the general fund. okay?
But that's not a restricted
But-
fund.
But there are, like library employees get paid, that should be paid out of library
Correct,
budget.
and that's a restricted
Yes,
fund.
which is where the interfunds come in, and that's what the comptroller's office
But
does.
see, that's the part, what I want to
Yeah.
know is where, when does that happen and how often does that happen? Okay, because we constantly take money out of the general fund and then we got to get the money back somehow from
Restricted
each one of those accounts.
Our-
When does that happen?
Our BSNA system tracks all that. So we have what we call interfund transfer that will go from back and forth from your general fund to your library, from your library to your general fund, and so on and so forth. We have to do that through a warrant, which is a form that I send over to the treasurer requesting that the money gets transferred from one account to the next. It should be done on a quarterly basis. I'm a little behind on that, and we are working on that right now to get that updated and completed to clean out those interfund transfers.
Okay, and how far are we behind? Do we know?
Oh, probably 6 months.
That's quite a bit. Well,
It's,
quarterly, now I guess only
yeah,
2 months.
it's just a matter of it's all sitting in BSNA that will, in an interfund transfer account, general ledger account number. So then it's just a matter of moving it from one account to the next.
Now, do those restricted funds, if they're in a bank account, do they collect any interest or anything of that nature?
Yes.
They do when they're in the pool account, yes.
Yes.
It's a very small amount, but yes.
Well,
But that has to be calculated, like if it's something that is collected
Podium.
interest-wise, that belongs, oh, I'm so sorry. So for our accounts, we have checking, which does not bear interest. That's meant to cover liabilities that are already cut, checks cut, and payments. And then you have the pool accounts, which have a very small amount of interest that's earned. So if it's something that's restricted funds that are earning interest, that needs to be included in the calculation when the interfund is completed.
does that interest stay with that fund or does it go to the
It would
general
need to
fund?
stay with the fund if it's, yeah, which means you need to differentiate, know what's restricted, what's not. Same thing with the investment reports. I keep the investment funds separated when I invest them. Like PEG money is only invested as PEG money. It's not combined with somebody else, major or local streets. Those investments are all kept separate for that very reason. So when they earn interest, and right now they're earning quite a bit of interest, that's going to stay with that money, with that fund. It stays restricted.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Was there anything else? Because I don't want
Yeah,
to hang.
Treasurer-
Yes, sorry, I want
So
to make sure
I
we're
know at
Paul's
one
time.
point a concern was brought up about having too many accounts, and I know there's been debate back and forth about that. I just wanted to get your input on that. Honestly, I tell you myself, I was a little bit concerned about having too many accounts versus, so in other words, I'm just doing a hypothetical number here, 28 accounts versus having it in maybe 10 accounts. Of course, some have to be separated. I know some are restricted, but I did have a concern about having too many different accounts, balancing that out and keeping track of that. And I just want to get your input on that, if you don't mind.
Well, I know that's something the finance team is working on and is in discussions. And I think we're going to have a study session or request one before there's anything the council body's asked to do with that. Because it would require the council body to close accounts just like opening accounts. Remember, the accounts that I asked you to open were strictly related to tax levies and they're restricted in keeping them. So, which I recommend because they do earn interest. And you don't want it. You just can't commingle that money. There are some, because we've actually worked on it quite a bit, in fact, that we've agreed to, and that will come before you.
How many do you feel that there is right now, roughly?
I would say if you're counting your pool accounts, and remember you've got Chase and you've got Comerica and you've got Dearborn Federal Savings Bank. So with those in mind, I'm going 26 maybe. Yeah, but remember, restricted, there are some things and there's some reasons like Dearborn Federal Savings Bank, when you look at your monthly report, you notice it's like $600 balance, right? And you would say, well, why in the world do we have an account with $600 balance and why would you keep it open? Because it's a collection site for us, okay? They collect water payments and tax payments. They're located on both the north end of the city and the south end of the city, which is convenient for our senior citizens who choose to use that. So really, that will be a council decision, quite frankly. I leave it to you, the honorable body, to decide if you want to close that, because that's part of the agreement to have them as a remote collection site for us.
Wouldn't there be more advantage to using maybe one bank, or worst case, maybe two banks versus having three banks and too many? And this is
Well,
it's
that,
not
you know-
meant as a criticism.
Oh,
It's
no.
more of a.
It was way before my time.
Right.
So I don't take it personal at all, and I'm open to suggestions, but I believe, and I don't want to speak for the former treasurer, Mr. Riley, who was treasurer for 26 years in the city, but I've asked staff that have known him nearly that long, and they will say, and I do see his point, he doesn't believe in putting all his eggs in one basket. And that's called diversification. Remember, when you talk about investments and money, it has to be secure and safe, and it needs to be diversified.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
What do you recommend? Do you recommend that you need this money, or do you think you?
I've made my recommendations on what accounts can be closed. Okay, and again, I think I don't remember the number, 5 at least, maybe more, I don't remember. Do you remember? I'm sorry, I'm asking the chief of staff. This is why we need the study session, because then we have it in front of us, and I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize.
I wish we
yeah,
can take
went
care of
through
it
the
before the
list.
new budget that comes out. I wish we can take care of it before the new
Yeah.
budget.
I think that's the goal of the administration, yes. Was there anything else with the annual disclosure, though? I want to make sure we answer those questions for you tonight.
Any other council members have questions?
Just
on
the thing we were behind, what's it called, the annual what?
Annual disclosure.
No, the one we're behind 6 months.
Oh,
Inter funds, is
Yeah.
that gonna affect, that's not gonna affect the new budget, correct? What about the audit? No?
if I may be so bold to tell you what it does affect, and the comptroller knows this because we've talked about it extensively, is it can impact your cash flow when things get tight. So typically, when I come to you and I talk about cash flow, we already know what will fix that, because interfunds are really important to that. And the comptroller King, I give her a lot of credit. She understands. She knows. You understand that. She knows that, and she's working diligently to get that done, because she knows and understands and appreciates the need for that. Because it does impact cash flow. When you're talking a couple $1 million here, it obviously will impact cash flow. So,
Councilman Tom had a question?
Yeah, something was said that concerned me about accounts over budget already and into 6 months into the budget. That's for the year, right?
yeah, that is more with your book side. The general ledger is what Comptroller King's referring to. And the name of your report is the actual to budget report is what you're referring to. You should just got that in your email yesterday, I believe. Was that when you sent it?
Yeah, because I'm waiting for the.
Oh, I have a copy, but that's why I have a copy. Never mind, I didn't say that. No.
Can you give us an example of one of the ones that are way over budget already?
Do you need anything else from me? I mean, I want to make sure, again, your
Well-
questions are answered. And then I have a question for you when you're ready.
Okay, so I'm going to see first, is there anybody in the audience or on Zoom that has a questions for our treasurer? Or for Paul Stauder with PFM? I hope you guys can hear me.
Council
You guys
Chair,
at least
can-
hear me?
Do you see any, no?
Okay, can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay, so they can hear. Okay, anybody online? Madam Clerk, do you see, I don't see any questions, do you?
Council Chair?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can you answer that question for me?
That I'm going to leave to the comptroller,
Oh, okay.
if I may, because that really is her field. She's coming right back, because the next part of your study session is the audit, the annual audit results and other things, state findings. So with that, my question is, because this is a receive, note, and file, it's never been on the council agenda because it's an administrative function of the treasurer's office. And again, it was put on for transparency's sake, right?
Right.
And we appreciate the opportunity to come before you today and answer your questions. I hope it's helpful. But again, I believe because it was referred back, you would need to be back on the agenda for you to receive, note, and file. Is that your choice?
I don't believe
You don't
that's the
think so?
case.
We don't need to?
No,
Because we really don't need, yeah.
Yeah, we've already received no and file,
It's
this was just a
done.
study session.
Yeah, very good. I just want to make sure I don't have to put it back on the agenda for next council meeting.
no.
And I would do whatever this honorable body wanted me to do. Okay? All right, thank you,
No
everybody.
problem. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madam Treasurer.
Okay, let's
You,
just go
Council
ahead.
Chair, are you through with me, or?
Wait, I'm sorry. Yes, we're all done, Paul. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Or
it.
if you can see me, say thank you.
Madam Comptroller, Councilman, I think I had a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yes. You were asking about the ones that were over, and I can tell you right now that we are over budget on, just give me a minute here. The few that I have seen that are really over budget are retiree prior years, and I think it's because of the payouts. And we probably didn't budget enough for the payouts. So I do see that in a couple of the departments. And again, I haven't had the time to actually research that, so I haven't brought it to your attention yet. That's why I sent it to the directors first, to see how much they had actually budgeted for their retiree payouts or their payouts for people who had left, as opposed to that we're over budget on those. Those
Do you have
were,
an idea of how much that is over budget,
yes,
roughly?
yes. I can tell you, for the building maintenance, one of them, we had budgeted $3,000, and we're at year-to-date $5,000, so we're over budget by $1,900 on that particular one. And
Are there any that are like outrageously over budget?
yes, overtime is an issue in building and engineering. We budgeted $10,000, and we're at $14,000 right now, so that puts us over about $4,500.
And that's for roughly 6 months out of the year.
That's correct. Then in ordinance, we have retired prior years, which again was a payout that was never budgeted for, and that's $4,300. Emergency storms has always been a high over budget. We're at $81,000 right now, and we only budgeted $47,000.
Emergency storms?
Yes. Overtime again for Recreation Department is over by about $2,300. And well, there's a few here that I don't think are really posted to the right account, so I really didn't want to go into that until I actually looked at it, because we have under the pension department, the fringe benefits is over budget, and I'm not sure that that was actually posted to the right account.
Typically, what happens, do you take that money out of that particular budget, or do you have to borrow from another source?
To amend the budget, you mean? Well, they'll tell me if they want to take it from a different source.
Or what if they don't have it?
Then
Say
it'll
like
have to
this one's
come,
already $40,000 over the storm,
well, then that'll come out of the general,
just out of the general fund.
yeah.
And that, you think that's one of the worst ones there, the emergency
Yes,
storm?
that is definitely one of the
What-
worst ones.
And that is, can you explain what that is? What is that?
Emergency storms?
Yeah.
It's when we have all of our water main breaks.
Okay, water main breaks?
Yes. Yes.
God knows
No.
we have a lot of those.
Oh, yes.
It's not. If Gustav is saying it's not, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, this is not the first time that emergency storms is over budget. I've asked that question before. We never budget for emergencies. So when we had the trees that fell this year, all of those emergency pickups contracts that aren't typical part of our contracts go into that account. So it's always going to be over budget, and it is up to the department director to either lower his budget from any of his other sources, any of the other general ledger accounts. It is my advice that moving forward that we do budget for emergencies, because we always have them. But I don't know why it has been the past practice that you don't budget for emergencies, because you don't know if you're going to have an emergency. But that's just my personal opinion.
So are you saying nothing's typically budgeted for it, zero?
Not in the past, no, they haven't. But this particular year, they did, but it wasn't much.
Didn't you say they budgeted 40,000?
47.
Yeah.
Does that include, Marianne, does that include like overtime for salting and plowing? No, nothing like that?
But it would have to do with like water main breaks and whatnot, correct?
No.
Trees
So this is just,
So this is just storms, right? So trees down, having to call special people to do special tree cuts and cleaning up all of that wood, all of those contracts that, again, aren't typically done by our staff, and we need immediate assistance from contractors typically to come help us out. So this is contracted services for emergency situations.
Can we get a report for all these emergency situations that happen?
Yes, and by the way, the $47,000, they weren't budgeted at the beginning of the fiscal year. You approved 2 budget amendments already because of the emergencies we've had. And each time, we asked the director to explain what type of emergency was this, so that you all understand what it was for. So as you know, earlier this year, we had 2 really bad emergencies with windstorms. So that's what that was for.
Do you remember we had to have some subcontractors, because obviously ours was not enough to pick up all the trees and all the garbage and all the what have you. Remember, there's multiple trash companies that helped out, if you recall.
that was for the flood last year.
For flood, right.
Yeah, this year it's.
This year there was not that. Trees, yeah.
We are,
So that's about the few that I see that are way over budget at this point. And they will have a thorough report for you by the end of the week,
Thank you.
okay?
And typically what happens, obviously, when something's over budget, when the directors put their budgets together to be brought forward to us, they could see that if they had always asked, let's just say for 100,000, but they see that it went up to 172, then obviously they have to sit down with the administration and work out a little higher amount to come back to us within their budget. Controller, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Much appreciated. Treasurer, I know she's gone, but thank you, appreciate it. One last chance, anybody from the audience that has any questions? Okay, seeing and hearing none, nobody here either. All right, we'll go into the next section, the audit section of our study session. Gentlemen and ladies, you guys want to just continue right on?
yeah,
or
let's just continue right on.
Continue right on? All right, let's go ahead and go into our audit section. So if you could do us, come on up, sir, how are you? So if you could do us a favor, introduce yourself and give us a little abbreviation from your end, and then we'll go ahead and go with whatever questions we have, and of course from the audience also. This has already been submitted, of course.
Yes.
And approved to the state, but I felt as a council chair that we should have these one-on-one study sessions so that a lot of our council members can get further and further educated on this process. But also, just as importantly, on your end, to let us know what things that you feel that the city, as all cities always have something that they're working on to better themselves, what things that you recommend that the city should start, and the city council members should start to focus on for this coming year, based on last year's results. So go ahead, sir.
Certainly.
Please introduce yourself.
And good evening, everyone. A pleasure to be here. I'm Jay Wild. I'm a principal with Allen Young and Associates. This is obviously our first year doing the audit of the city. The audit was completed and dated December 31st, submitted then the following Tuesday after the holiday, so we do have what's considered a timely submission. There were a number of challenges to get to that point. We all, worked extremely hard to get that done. Want to certainly thank, Cindy as the comptroller for her assistance, Brian and his team from Plant Moran. Everything had to come together. It's just something that takes time. As you can tell by the report itself, it's almost a 90-page document. There is a multitude of information that goes in that. So it takes time to gather the information. Once we get the information, to audit the information. But again, it's fantastic working with a team who works so hard to get us what we need. And also, we fully know that the 2023 audit is not going to be going up to the deadline like it did this year. We know with the teams that are in place and with the experience that they've had and have been working with the information, it's going to be a significantly different process. But the beauty of it throughout the process, even though it took time to get some of the information and to process it, every question we ever asked was fully acknowledged. We knew we were going to get what we needed. There was never any concerns that the information was not going to be available or there were going to be challenges with information gaps. That was never the case. The information was always going to be provided, just a matter of getting through the timing and doing things that were needed with the audit. So just wanted to say that up front.
Sure, appreciate that.
Now with the audit itself, and obviously I'm not going to go through the entire thing with the multitude that's there, want to hit on some of the highlights. First of all, on the very first page of the report, it's the independent auditor's report. Do just want to identify that any of you that look at the report in detail, you'll see the report looks different this year. Yeah. That is universal. There have been some changes in the auditing guidance, and the report letter is new. It gives a little more information. Nothing really with the audit itself is different or new. It's just what's disclosed in the report. There's some additional information that's included. The very first paragraph now is the opinion. That doesn't go on the second or third page. It's right up front. Beautiful thing here, we did have an unmodified opinion. As we fully anticipated, that's the gold standard of opinions. It means once we went through our procedures, everything in our opinion was fairly stated. So that starts things, right out. Also on the second page, there's about 4 or 5 bullet points that explain some of the key components of an audit. It also describes the concept of reasonable assurance, which is a very important one. It's the way audits are done. What that means is I can't stand here before you tonight and say with 100% certainty that there are not misstatements that we did not identify. Certainly our procedures are designed to help us identify those. We do not believe there are any. But the concept of reasonable assurance means that we don't test 100% of transactions, so I can't tell you with 100% certainty that there aren't issues that are there. But obviously an audit cannot be conducted looking at every single transaction.
So just to clarify,
Yes.
when you say misstatements, you're referencing if you're given information by somebody from within the department, you're going to presume it's true unless you know otherwise, what you're saying, I presume, is what you're saying.
We're going to
'Cause
perform
when you say misstatements, you're not talking about verbally having a conversation
No,
with someone.
talking about misstatements within the financial
The reports
numbers
that you're given.
themselves.
But even then, if there is, for example, a misstatement, it is still documented and it shows who it was that gave you the misstatement, and you could backtrack to figure out where the wrongful thing was done.
Yes.
Versus the verbal.
Certainly.
Right,
And
okay.
again, our procedures are identified to help us identify such things, but as an example, I mean, you issue an untold number of checks over the course of the year. We do some testing of those disbursements, but not every single one. So there could conceivably be a check that was written in September that in a worst-case scenario was for a falsified purpose. We don't look at every single check, so I can't stand here and say that absolutely did not happen. Our procedures did not identify anything of that sort, and our procedures and our sampling methods are designed to help us identify cases like that. But again, we're looking at a sample, and that's just the concept of reasonable versus absolute assurance that an audit is undertaken under. Also do want to identify, right now that also as part of the audit, there is what's called a single audit based on your federal expenditures. Since your federal expenditures were above the $750,000 threshold, that will be tested. That is ongoing as we speak. There's a different time frame with that. The state does not require the single audit to be submitted within the 6-month time frame as the financial audit is. So that is actually due March 31st. So everything is still on time with that for 2022, but that is still ongoing. With the rush to get the financial audit done, it just made no sense to squeeze in the single audit as well. So that is ongoing as we speak.
So based on your recommendations, there's a lot of companies, obviously different companies that do audits, and we've traditionally worked with, Plant Moran. But as you are aware, because we had hired Plant Moran, worked with our controllers and our administration, obviously it would have been a conflict of interest to have them do our audit. Therefore, we as a body, as a council body, made the choice to go with your firm. The question I have for you is, based on your findings and concerns, do you have a particular system in place to follow through to make sure those are done, or what is that system that you use?
Yes, and if we're referring to with the single audit is in general the forum where not only are non-compliance issues identified relating to the federal expenditures. That's also the general forum where significant deficiencies and material weaknesses in your financial reporting is also reported. However, in a case such as this, where the single audit is issued subsequently after the financial audit is completed, we still do all of the work relating to the internal controls over financial reporting. That is what's done under government auditing standards, which is what happens when you have a single audit. So within this audit report, in the back, we do include the 3 findings that were identified relating to financial reporting and material noncompliance. So what the single audit will now only report additionally is if there were to be any findings relating to compliance with federal guidelines, with your federal programs, it would be reported in that document. But instead of in that document, your financial reporting compliance findings are included within the document that was already issued.
One of the first things I do when we get these things, I go right to those deficiencies.
Yes.
And I think the city has done a good job in the last couple of years getting rid of a lot of deficiencies that Plant Moran came up with. They kept giving it to us the same ones over and over again. Then you finally are cleaning some of that stuff up. You just can't clean them all up at once. And I'm sure with all the expenditures and money received, and we're going to have something somewhere along the line. I don't believe there's a city out there that's perfect, is there?
There sure isn't. And that's very well put, because the thing with findings as well is when they ultimately get corrected, there's still going to be a lag effect you're always going to see. So that's what we're seeing here. We still got 3 items that are identified as findings. That's down from what you've had in the past. And really with the items that are here, that's just a carryover factor, because by the time the 2021 audit was completed, and by the time you had changes in the comptroller's office and Plant Moran was brought on board to assist with that financial function, problems had already occurred during fiscal 2022. Right. So my expectation and anticipation is that's going to be even cleaner in 2023. And we're going to get to the point where instead of deficiencies and weaknesses, we maybe just have a couple general comments that don't reach that threshold, or just some comments and recommendations. So absolutely, things are improving, and I think that'll present itself even more in next year's audit.
Right, because when you turned in was in December, late December 31st, I think it was, or what have you. And that was the stuff that was up to July.
Absolutely. So if there was anything new that would have been identified.
It had already been 6 months
You'd
of
already be
stuff
6
going
months
on.
in, and you may not be able to rectify that. So often, you're going to have findings that will be repeated just because of the timing factor
I know
at
Plant
times.
Moran has helped us out tremendously this past year. I mean, they did a lot of hard work, right along with our comptroller did. I mean, you guys must have been. I don't know how you have any more hair on your head.
Now, what processes do you have in place? And I don't know if it's a conflict of interest, honestly, because being that we have Plant Moran working with our comptroller's office right now, by putting better procedures and basically just better practices in place, is it still considered a conflict of interest for you to be working directly with Plant Moran, being that they were the previous auditors, you guys are the current auditors, but obviously you do in general the same things as companies? Do you work together, or do you work only directly through the controller?
No, we do work with both parties, and it's a very common relationship, and there's no conflict, because what has happened is Plant has went from a function where they are giving an assertion, moving into the side of things where they are working directly with the numbers. So it would be a conflict if it went the other way around. If they went from doing the numbers throughout the year and then stepped in and then audited essentially their own work.
Their stuff, right?
Exactly. So it can't go that direction, but going the direction that it did, happens regularly, and there's no problem or conflict with that, because we are, as the audit firm, we're the independent third party, looking at the information. So even though Plant Moran did the audit in 2021 and they're helping put the information together in 2022, it's still coming to us, and we are doing our audit procedures on it. So it makes no difference if the audit documentation is coming from the comptroller's office or from Plant Moran, or a combination of the two, or however they choose to bifurcate those functions.
Okay. Council members? Any council members have any questions?
I'm pleased with how everything went. Pleased with Plant Moran, pleased with the comptroller's office, pleased with you.
Okay.
I just think,
Thank you. I feel much better standing here tonight than I did the week between Christmas and New Year as we were scrambling to get things done, but we got here, so that makes it all worthwhile.
you know, we've had issues in the past. There was a lot of issues. I think everybody's cleaned it up. Plant Moran, you know, over the years has constantly told his council what was there. But fixing it was another issue, and things are getting better.
Absolutely.
And it's just a group of good people coming together and solving things. And I thank you very kindly for everybody working so hard to do it.
Thank you.
And I know the councilman mentioned it, but one of the things, I guess, me and Councilman Ray Muscat being one of the older guys on the council here,
The senior citizens.
senior citizens on the council.
Hey,
On every audit, it would be the same issues that were deficiencies, and they would just come up
Every
year
year.
after year.
I don't see that
after year
anymore.
After year, and we'd be like almost screaming, like, come on, I mean, there does come a point where this stuff has got to be taken care of. So I'm glad Plant Moran was brought on board. A part of the issue at one point, you know, for quite a while is honestly in the controller's office, things were just so far behind previous to our new controller. Things were just so far behind that those deficiencies were going to continue to come up. So I'm glad we're going in the right direction, and I'm glad we have the right people in place.
And actually, from
There's
our
three of them right there.
perspective, with our first year of working with the city, everything is looking rosy from our side because any of the issues, you've taken steps and have made changes. There's new people in key positions, and there have been changes that have been made. So we haven't seen any of that, you know, stuck in the mud and the same things. You know, other clients that I work with see that regularly. We've got, you know, comments that have been there for 5-6 years and no end in sight. And that's always a bad sign. It means things just aren't being taken seriously enough, and the implications just aren't being realized. But here, you know, clearly changes have been made. There's positive progress that's being made, and that really, you know, presents itself.
You know, it's up to us council people and the administration to give our comptroller's office all the tools necessary to complete the process. And, you know, she's only one person and can't do it all by herself, and we got to figure a way to give her more tools to fix.
Well, absolutely. And with Plant Moran, I mean, there's other firms out there also that do what they do, but, you know, speaking from our experience with the firms we've worked with, I mean, we think the work that Plant done is just exceptional. So anytime we see, you know, a city or entity that utilizes them, that's always a good sign to us that we'd like to get involved because we know the quality of work we're going to see.
That's good to know.
So for the controller and for our Plant Moran representative, is there anything that you feel that us as a body, if nothing else, at least put it on our radar, that we could do to help make your jobs, and I know me and the controller have talked a little bit about this, to make your jobs better, easier, and then continue to keep the city moving forward, and continuing to have our auditors come in with a smile on their faces that you're doing, I say, a pretty good job. So let's start with the controller, if you don't mind.
Who wants to speak? You want to speak?
Well, we'll have ladies first, always. That's always my rule. That's why in case my mom ever watches, I don't get in trouble. So I always have ladies go first. Cheers.
I'm going to say the same thing that you already know, that we have discussed numerous times, and one of them is to close out some of the bank accounts that we had discussed earlier with the treasurer. We are working toward that, and I think that's going to make a major difference in cleaning things up and making things run a lot smoother.
Council Chair, do you need a formal request to have a study session for those accounts?
No, this is what they're working on putting together, then they'll
Yes.
come back to us, we have to approve it. If they're gonna
Yes,
shut
you'll
down an
approve the
account,
ones that we want
we have to
close.
approve it. But obviously, they're gonna have a plan,
Yes.
Councilman, as far as, okay, they're taking out, just throw out, I don't know, let's say $10,000 out of Comerica. They're gonna have a plan, okay, we're closing out the Comerica account at $10,000, but we're gonna move it to X account. So this is where the controller and the treasurer and administration have to put together a game plan.
Right.
Council Chair,
Yes, Mayor.
also, I mean, Brian and I, we met for an hour today, and we went over, so they have a spreadsheet of some of the things that what they're doing as they go. There, some of the issues that they identified, some of it completed, half completed, or not completed. And, one of them obviously is for both the comptroller and the treasurer's office that we need to work on. But in addition, they have the bank, trying to limit the amount of bank accounts that we have. So obviously, we will present, Brian, I'm sure he's going to be talking about that as well. So they do have a lot of recommendations, and that's something it has to get done, to make things better so we can run efficiently in the city. So right now, there's just so much stuff going on, and we do have to have a better, more efficient way to do business in the city. And right now, there's just so much stuff going on. And that's one of the reasons that, I want to thank you guys. You guys, I know Roger was rough on you guys. I was there when he called you, right before Christmas, like, hey, we got to get this stuff done, even right before the New Year's. So I know, Brian, you were on vacation. Sorry for, calling you on vacation. So we were freaking out because we wanted to get the audit done. But we don't have to do this if we had an efficient way to do things. And that's what Plant Moran is actually trying to help us to be more efficient. And the way that, there's a lot of issues that we have to iron out. And this is something that wasn't just done overnight. This is stuff that's been going on for the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, some of the processes had fallen way behind over the years, and some of it was antiquated, to say the least. Having spoken with multiple controllers over the last few years. So I'm glad Plant Moran and I think the council body for approving it has come on board and continue to work with our great controller to make this thing go in the right direction. Did any council members have any other questions for the controller?
Council Chair?
Go ahead.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't mention that Plant Moran Gap is the company or the entity that's helping you out in the comptroller's office?
That is correct.
The ones, and that's the one you're referring to also? Now, is that a budgeted item? Is that to pay them, is that budgeted?
Yes.
And I did ask you if there was anything over budget. And that is extremely over budget. Am I correct?
No.
No?
Actually, it's not, because we put that under contracted services, and we have not gone over budget on that particular account.
So can we say how much we've paid them to date since they started?
Oh, we've paid them a lot of monies.
Well, I know we agreed on 400 and something, 450,000, and I believe we've already paid them over 700,000.
The last time I checked, it was about 438,000, if I recall correctly. I don't have that number right in front of me, but I can definitely pull it for you.
That's for only the amount of time, 6 months.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah.
is that, now, we're to adjust that budget, because if we keep them on for another 6 months,
Then we will be over budget.
and where would $500,000 come from for that?
Well,
The
it'd
general
have to come
fund?
from the general fund, yes. And where else were we going to get it?
Partially, because it will be spread amongst.
The
all
departments?
funds, yeah.
We could
It'd be
pull
what,
it from the
spread
different
between all
departments.
the
Right now, it is under general
funds?
fund.
I believe this process here helps us to find out where we are financially so we can move forward with other things that we need to do. And if we don't know how much money we've got or how we're going about spending it all, I don't think we can function and do our jobs
And
without knowing all of these problems that we've had.
And that's why I think it's important that the budget to actual goes out to you and you actually pay, I don't want to say pay attention, but you actually look at it. Because that does tell you where we're at on that specific day. However, the reason that I reluctantly send it, because I'm not 100% comfortable with the numbers that I have right now because of the way that the comptroller and the treasurer department is running at this time. We're behind on some of the things that are coming over. We're behind on some of the things that are being done, being posted to the general ledger right now, and that has to do with our staffing.
So, to be fair, I mean, we do pay Plant Moran a tremendous amount of money.
Yes.
And if we took some of those funds and actually hired people full-time that are knowledgeable to do this kind of work, and they work full-time in a comptroller's office, that would significantly help us continue to do what we need to do. Am I correct?
Yes, yes, and that's what we're working toward, and Plant Moran is definitely on board with that and has been very open to helping me with that, you know,
So
getting
in the
what.
future, we may be able to cut all of that out, that money, and hire our own people.
Yes, and I believe that when Plant Moran had started, I think their vision was that they would be able to get this city up and running within 2 years, and what, it's been almost a year now? So, you know, we're looking to maybe cut that down to 18 months, you know, give us another 6 months and get some quality, knowledgeable
When I said
people.
it's up to us to give you the tools that you need to work with, I
That's
believe
correct.
that's one of the biggest tools in your
Yeah.
toolbox. then.
Yes, yes, yes. And Plant Moran can definitely vouch for that because they've been here. They've seen the disgruntlement that we have between the departments and trying to get the information and the issues that we've had that are major issues with the bank reconciliation statements. I can't tell you how difficult that is because of the different bank accounts and how it gets moved from one account to the next and then back to this account and then over to here, and trying to follow that trail
Multiple
is
mistakes
just
could be made that way.
extremely difficult, yes. And they can vouch for that because they had three
And one of the
people.
advantages of multiple banks, sometimes you go to different banks because they give a little bit more interest. But obviously with interest rates nowadays, it's in my opinion, almost an insignificant difference
Yes,
for the problems that it causes by having too many accounts.
yes,
It's not really the bank.
'Cause it's not like- it's not-
But it's accounts within a bank.
Right.
Is what we need to.
But it's not like you're
Yes.
going from, let's just throw out, like, let's say 4% to another one giving you 11%.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking
right.
about 4.12 to 4.17 or whatever. It's not really significant enough to have a multitude of accounts, in my opinion. And to me, it's almost logical.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, Council Chair, it was really interesting. I had a meeting with the DCC, you know, we're part of, obviously, the DCC community. And one of the treasurers from another city, he's actually been working on a system with trying to consolidate accounts. He's been doing it for the last 5-6 years. And they actually saved, they didn't have as many accounts as we did. They had less than half what we have right now, actually less than probably a third. So they narrowed it down to even a third of that. And he was telling me that they actually saved hundreds and thousands of dollars in fees that were hidden fees that, you know, they were not aware of. So this is something that, you know, I asked, you know, Plant Moran, actually, we talked about, you know, when we look at the accounts, there's certain things we need to track, you know, we need to go back, and that's one of the things that, you know, I mentioned at the last meeting. I want them to look at every account to see how much fees that we're having to pay as a city, to see if we can save money from some of the fees. There's a lot of banks, you know, that want our business. So we want to make sure that, you know, we have the best, you know, best bank that we can actually have less fees or, you know, more interest. So I don't think we've looked at that. I don't think we went out to check. But we've talked, you know, there's, like I said, talked to multiple cities in different meetings that I go to, from the CWW to the DUA DCC meetings. And, you know, everybody's doing the same thing. They're going out, they're trying to get the best rate, you know, best banks, you know, that can give them the best rates, and they're not paying excess fees. And there's a lot of fees that the banks are imposing on cities that, you know, people are not paying attention to. And it's significant. I'm talking hundreds and thousands of dollars, you know, a year that it's costing, you know, the cities. So we're going to look at that, you know, Plant Moran's going to help us look at that as well. And I know, you know, I mean, we've been discussing that, you know, over the last times that we met with Brian, and today we discussed that. So there's, you know, there's a lot of things that we have in works, and we just, like I said, we all have to work together, trying to have a better process. And when you talked about, you know, you guys are part of the meetings we had when we did the meetings at Riverside, trying to get somebody. Well, we did approve both times with Plant Moran Gap to help us with this process, the training. So that's something that they're going to help us as well. You know, when we do get an accountant, we talked about last time, they're gonna help that person, get up to speed, to see what's going on, see what we need to fill that gap.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have questions for our controller? Okay, thank you,
Alrighty.
Controller.
You're very welcome.
Next up, we have from Plant Moran. Come on up.
Good evening.
Evening.
I would like to thank Jay and his team. The audit, while difficult because it was a first year and all the work that we were having to do, we've worked together enough in this capacity over the years in many cities that there's a certain level of trust. Thank you for the compliments. And it goes both ways. We know that they are going to do everything that they have to do. They will break their backs in order to hit a deadline. And I very much appreciate that, Jay. And it is all of the compliments that were being talked about earlier is wonderful to hear, and thank you for those. But please don't think that you're anywhere near the finish line.
No, we're not.
So the audit may have had fewer findings, and the numbers that were presented from the city to the auditors to be audited were materially correct. You had to see how the sausage was made to get to that part. So you asked the question of what can be done. Absolutely, the comptroller's office needs to increase the size and skill level in terms of its people. But probably even more important than that is correcting the very stale and out-of-date processes. There's still way too much paper. There's still way too much manual adjustments that get made, manual processes that happen. The bank accounts is probably the biggest one of that. You have 40-some, and I think you can get away with 5 or 6. And yes, there will definitely be savings, financial savings, not in time, just how much you're paying us to reconcile 40 accounts to try to catch up when it could be 6.
Sorry, it's not,
Okay,
it's
if I
not
can interrupt
26
you.
account.
See, that's,
He said 28, but I believe there's
It's over 40.
Over 40?
okay, so that concerns me. So that's,
Wow.
right when you said 40, I'm thinking, we just heard 28. See,
Yeah,
that-
so
Can
the
somebody
treasurer
maybe
That
just give us the right
concerns
number?
me.
Can you confirm that for me exactly?
I mean-
You know what, Council Chair, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
If Mary can come from the treasurer, Mariano, or comptroller, I'd like to know
He's
the
gotta
40
check it.
accounts, and I'd like to know exactly how much is in every single account. That's what
Yeah.
I'm requesting, please, and I want to know which account, and if it's a PEG fund, what bank, how much? If it's this account, what it is, how much? We would like a list of that. I think every single person here deserves to see that.
I think that was part of my question.
As of January
I
1st.
think you were asking for that.
Yeah,
and-
the beginning of, when do we see this? When do we see all the money in each account?
Where do you see it?
Yeah.
When?
Or when? When are we gonna see it, okay?
Well, so that falls to the treasurer. The treasurer should be providing a regular, at least quarterly reporting to the governing body. I have nothing to do with that part of it, so I really can't speak to whether you got it, whether it was late. I have no idea.
So then do you know if there's 40 or not?
Well, I do because we're reconciling them.
So then you do have access to them.
Yes, they're not
But he's not the one
reconciled
that can
through
provide it directly to
1231.
us.
Yeah, we're still,
You have to remember, Plant Moran's primary purpose when we hired him on is we were consistently getting in the audits that, it was just a lot of deficiencies. And the reason there was a lot of deficiencies is, for lack of better words, our city for many, many years was run under Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble accounting. And we brought them on and put in processes in place and to bring a lot of stuff up to date. And that's one of the reasons also, we had a lot of turnover with controllers. We had many controllers eventually honestly leave just because they were frustrated. Just, things were just.
Maybe it was squiggy.
Yeah, it's squiggy. So everything was just so far behind, when they'd come in to do the audits, it was just, they're used to certain processes, then they'd come and deal with heights, it would be like way behind. This is what they're putting in the processes in place to make sure there's much better efficiency.
we're trying to get to the point of putting the processes in. So the audit was later than what it normally had been and finished later. That is nothing on Allen Young. That's on the fact that within the city, you became unauditable, that's why Plant Moran we vacated the role of your auditor because the PM Gap group could serve you better. than we could as the auditors. We're still reconciling bank accounts, trying to get caught up to today. So the audit is June 30th, 6 months ago, and it took us a full 6 months exactly to 12/31 in order to get the records up to date and auditable and go through the audit process. So my team today is still reconciling bank accounts July, August, September, October, and we will get current. And when we're current, we want to consolidate as many of those accounts as possible to save time going forward. The comment made about how much Plant Moran's been paid, absolutely, it is a lot. And we would like to work ourselves out of a job so that we can work toward things that are more valuable than bank reconciliations. The process improvements that are possible, we can't get there until the records are up to date. So we want to get there, we want to fix you, and then there are a lot of other communities that could use our help too.
So just to clarify for some of the council members, when you have an auditor in place, they'll say what deficiencies are in place, the issues that the controller's office has in any city, not just in our city. So just because they find stuff on the audit doesn't mean we're a bad city. Every city's got issues with their audits. But then they put what they recommend needs to be worked on, but they're not gonna put together the step-by-step plan or the logistics part, okay? So they're just telling us, this is the problem you've got, this is what needs to be fixed. But they're not gonna put together the actual plan for putting it, and that's where
That's what we're trying to do.
his team comes in right now.
Yes.
Now, are you going to recommend to the city council of what accounts should be combined and which ones?
Yes.
You'll give us a listing of how they should look like.
Our recommendation, close this account, put the money in that account. And just narrow it down.
Say we end up with 6 accounts, and those 6 accounts will have the other 32 accounts in them.
Correct. The general ledger software that you have is fully capable of keeping track of what activity goes with which dollar amount. It doesn't have to be physically segregated into separate bank accounts.
Okay, so I fully understand that, and I've been talking to the comptroller and to the administration quite a bit on this, and I'm fully in on this, okay? As long as we're able to, negotiate through, restricted funds and make sure that they're protected and of that nature. Because I think that's what drove myself about an audit before, is because I didn't know what was happening with the restricted funds. Okay, so now I believe we have a handle on it, and sometimes you got to spend a dime to make a dime. Okay, or to actually spend a dime to make a dollar.
Yep. And as of June 30, 2022, we know where everything is and where it should be because that was the completed audit. So now the last 6 months, because processes aren't good, things end up in the wrong place. And what my team is doing right now is finding those mistakes and fixing it. But those mistakes are going to keep happening. The process is going to continue to be very cumbersome until we narrow it down to fewer accounts and utilize the technology the way it is intended to be used.
I'm glad that you're saying all of this for the public, the general public, to hear this on how bad we weren't doing a very good job here in this city.
Well, I don't want to go that far.
That's why I look at it. That was not being done correctly and not a good job, and now we're on the process of getting onto the right track.
You were getting to the right place every fiscal year, but it was way too hard. It was way too time consuming. It was way too inefficient. And then at some point you did cross a line where we felt last year as auditors, we could no longer do our job with the way that city finance was operating.
In my line of business, inefficiency cost a lot of money.
Agreed.
Okay, so when you have inefficiency, you have a cost associated with that.
Time is money.
But that cost is our taxpayers. Goes to the taxpayers, and that's, I want them to know about it, and we're trying to fix it.
Also, it keeps our city more vulnerable because now it's hard to put checks and balances in place if all the numbers are not in place properly.
You don't know what you have to pay anybody. How do you go-
God forbid for somebody to get away with something. So Councilman Bedun's next, then Councilman
Go ahead,
Wenzel.
Councilman. Thanks.
How many restricted funds do we have?
I couldn't tell you. I'd have to
You
go.
don't know offhand?
Off the top of my head, I don't
I
know.
mean, is it common practice to put a restricted fund in the same account with some kind of a general
In
fund?
the same
and-
bank account?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that there's
Because
no
the
problem
software
borrowing and
keeps
saying, we'll
track.
pay that back or something like that?
It's not borrowing. It's the software keeps track. All the money's in one spot, but the software knows that 50,000 goes here and 100,000 goes there. And if the accounting is working correctly, there's no concern that restricted money is going to be used in an inappropriate fashion.
What would happen if, say, there's, just say $50,000 in restricted funds in this account, and then we took some more than we had for the rest of them, say 10,000 of that 50, so the software recognizes that? I mean, does it say we got to pay that back, or how's
Yeah,
that
it would-
work?
it would end up
How do we
getting-
know if it's paid back? I mean, is there something that shows up that says this was never paid back into the
Well,
restricted?
part of it would be through the audit process to make sure that, so you have to keep in mind, there are funds and there are bank accounts. So you have funds that keep track of certain revenue sources, and that money can only be used for certain things. The bank account itself feeds into those funds, and it's perfectly fine and very normal for one bank account to feed 5, 10, 15, 20 funds. And so doing the accounting, doing the monthly reconciliation and close, getting to the year-end close and the audit process, that will then it should give you the reassurance that the city used its restricted funds in the right way.
Is that something that's going to be reported to us that we could understand? See how that happens, maybe?
I'm certainly happy to come and talk about your budget to actual, the balance sheet, the financial statements, anytime you want. If there's ever a question about where or how did this money get spent, where did it come from, and where did it go, there's always an answer for that. We can certainly get that for you.
All right, thanks.
And Councilman, this is why, so like, what we are doing here today is not traditionally done at a council meeting. I made the decision to do this because I feel that as all of us as council members should be able to have the opportunity to ask a lot of these questions that maybe during a regular council meeting, when we're voting on this, we can't realistically be here. Like right now, we've been an hour and a half on this. We can't realistically ask questions for an hour and a half during a regular council meeting. It's just not practical. So that's why I'm having this. So anytime you have something that you feel, in your opinion as a councilman, that, this is something we should probably look into, let me know. And as long as it's reasonable, I'd be more than happy to set up a study session with him and maybe our controller, of course. Councilman Bedun, you had a question?
So, give me your first name again.
Brian.
Brian, I was gonna say, I don't know why I was thinking Paul, but, so forgive me.
Paul was
Brian,
the earlier gentleman.
that's what it was. So Brian, you guys have been with us for how long?
I believe council hired PM Gap last February,
Okay, so last February, so we're a little bit over,
almost a year.
we're about, almost about at a year. Okay, and I remember we were at Riverside, and when you came to that meeting, one of the things that you told us was that you are going to, you were gonna come in, you were gonna train some of these employees on board the treasurer's office, the comptroller's office, so that the person, the comptroller's not doing the work for the person, the treasurer, the person, the treasurer's not doing the work for the comptroller, because what we're seeing is double the amount of work has been done by individuals, and we're not being efficient with timings, and double the work, and there's just a lot of mistakes that were happening. That was the thing that you kind of came back and told us. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And so today, are we still seeing the mix and match that's happening since you've been here with us for the last year?
There are still, yes, some of the processes we have not been able to change them yet.
Why is that?
It's a function of time. It just prioritizing, getting the audit done, getting the records clean, getting the bank recs done. All the time spent doing that cleanup is time that we could have, had that other stuff not needed to be done, that could have been allocated toward process
So
improvement.
what does our next 6 months to potentially a year look like with you guys?
We have a dedicated staff person doing the bank reconciliations. Those will get caught up. And the mayor mentioned my spreadsheet. It's a list of, right now, 30 issues that we've identified to date. And
Thank you, Mariana.
we've cleared I don't know the numbers, forgive me, but we've cleared so many of them, so many are in process, so many are still needing to be addressed. But those 30 items are primarily process issues to stop doing what is currently happening and change to a better process. And for the most part, folks have been willing, they're open-minded, but at the same time, they're used to doing their job the way it's done. And so they're comfortable doing what they've always done. And it's still going to take time to swap out the old process, put in the new process. Some of the stuff has happened already.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
either for yourself or gentleman from Young here. There's what we're looking at here is at roughly about, what I see roughly about 45 bank accounts. And I know we're told it was possibly 28. That's obviously a lot more, but
Hi.
let's,
Sorry, I just want to clarify one thing. When the treasurer was speaking earlier, she was potentially only speaking about the bank accounts that are on the left side of your account, which are not investment accounts. The right hand of the document that I shared with you is the investment accounts. Again, for accounting purposes and the audit, we count both. We have to look at investments and your regular day-to-day operational bank accounts.
Right.
The other document that I shared with you is the treasurer's balance report that she shares with you every month
Right.
with regards to how much money each bank account has in the funds. And as you see, the numbers are blacked out for the bank account numbers just for security reasons. We can't share that publicly.
okay. So the question I have for you, Brian, is with so many bank accounts for cities of our size, because obviously it makes a difference what size city. LA is going to be obviously totally different than, Joe's small city, Iowa.
Sure.
But with other similar cities our size in the area, how many bank accounts on average do you see with them?
5 to 10.
5 to 10. Okay. And I'm just thinking logically, it seems like way too many bank accounts. I'm not an accountant by any stretch of the imagination, but just logically telling me way too many bank accounts. Why I think we have that issue, and other than just shutting them down, more importantly, maybe let me rephrase it a different way. If I can be so direct, are you getting any pushback from shutting these down? Because to me, logically, it seems like there's way too many.
I don't have the ability to shut them down.
I realize that. I recognize that.
We've made the suggestion to close many, if not most. I can't speak to why it hasn't happened or if some of it is in process and about to happen. That's entirely up to the treasurer. Well, the treasurer
Well, it's
can
up to
take
us at
action.
the end.
You would
Yeah.
have to approve.
We have to approve it.
Because previous councils have approved the creation of some of those bank accounts or the opening of some of those. And so if you voted to open it, you should vote to close it. But we talked earlier about that roadmap of here's the X number that we have currently, and we're going to move it to 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever the right number is, and here's how it's going to go. So council will be provided that, and you'll have opportunity to review it and hopefully bless it.
Okay, so on my end, again, from my little perspective, without talking to the expert being yourself and treasurer, controller, administration, I'm all in favor of shutting down a lot of these accounts. I just think it's absolutely crazy that we have that many on there. So I will definitely be in favor, and I would suggest to the treasurer's office, start going in that direction, because I know we approve at 10. Go ahead, Mariana.
I'm sorry, I feel like we're going really in-depth into the bank closing discussion, and we've discussed this in our finance team, and I would ask that you call for a study session as soon as possible, where the treasurer will be present,
Just
so
an
that
open
we can discuss this and then vote on which accounts you do recommend to close down, and hear the reasoning as to why some of those were opened in the first place by your predecessors and prior treasurers and current treasurers. So I would just advise that at this point, out of respect, you wait until she's here to have that conversation as well.
Okay.
I would also like to see, their recommendations of what accounts go with where and which ones combined to be in these. And I'd like to see those recommendations because I feel that Plant Moran and their team are the best ones to know how to do that, okay? I mean, they're dealing with so many cities, that's what they get paid to do. Plant Moran doesn't tell me how to fix a machine, I'm definitely gonna tell them how to.
I'm going to ask questions how to fix a machine. I do not know.
Let me know. Like, if I don't know the answer, we can go find one.
Also, like say, when these accounts, I mean, I know that you guys question that, like who opened the account, when did you open them? And hey, we didn't approve this. So for somebody to provide the counsel is when these accounts were opened and who authorized them to open. So I think this would be something that you guys would probably need to
Again,
look at.
just please call for a study session.
Yeah.
We've already done all of that research, and we're ready to present it to you. It's just a matter of
Why don't you
time.
go ahead and put together a study session, and we'll show
I
up.
have already discussed it
Okay,
with
perfect.
Council Chair, and yes, we're ready to have this conversation. I didn't want to do it today because I didn't know how extensive the audit conversation was going to be, but as soon as you're ready, we are as well, as with everyone that you're going to need
Again,
at
you
that
don't want the shine light to
presentation.
leave from the actual study session.
Yes.
I get it. The approach, it's the response.
Councilman Constant?
Thank you, Council Chair. Here's my question. So currently, the city of Dearborn Heights, it's all in our audit report, our printed audit report, I don't have in front of me. Is if you know, the city of Dearborn Heights has how many bank accounts open or closed right now as of today, as of January 2nd?
Whatever's on the schedule that Mariana just passed out, I don't know off the top of my head, but whatever's on there is.
Yeah, what's that number? It's just 45. Wait.
She says 45.
Yeah.
I would go by the one that has the blackouts. That's the
what I was
official
looking
bank
for.
account letter. It's
Yeah.
45 accounts that I counted
45.
just now. 45 bank accounts, correct.
So I had it right in front of me.
Yes.
And Plant Moran, I just heard you say that a city like, for example, the size of Los Angeles, they would have how many bank accounts open?
I have no
No,
idea.
no,
what
no,
the
no.
city of Los
I gave a
Angeles is.
hypothetical. I said, we're not Los Angeles, so obviously Los Angeles would have a lot more. So I said, similar cities with similar
Like city of
populations.
Dearborn. City of
And
Dearborn.
Brian mentioned it was 5 to 7.
5 to 10 is what I would normally see for a city the size of Dearborn Heights.
5 to 10, 45. Got it.
45, big cry from 28.
Big, well, who knows the percentages? They're 45 to 5. So that's 10 to 1. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pleased with what we learned today.
Any other council members have any questions?
Council Chair, I just wanted to make a comment because I used to do the bank recs. And so since 2018, it appears that 10 accounts have been opened.
10 additional
That's all,
accounts?
10 additional.
Okay.
So,
We used to have 30, so now we're at 40.
I don't know how many,
No,
but
no,
I
45.
circled it.
35.
I don't recognize
45.
that one. I don't recognize that one. So.
No, you gotta go with the black one.
Council Chair?
One that's blackened out.
Yes,
Right
go
here.
ahead.
And Clerk, the significance of that is that our current treasurer who's watching us started a year ago, before was Treasurer Zuhair Abdul Haq. So our current treasurer, our prior treasurer, John Riley, his last day was August of 2020. So
What's the
10 was under John Riley.
What's the question?
That's the question. Okay,
Well,
here's
so
the
I would like
question,
to-
Ray.
could I make
Here's the
one-
question, Ray.
Yeah?
Here's the question, okay? I just said to our clerk, Lincenia, who just told us that there were 10,
Open, new ones.
in the history going back to John Riley, going back to 2018, there were 10, and now there's 5.
There's 10.
Or not, now there's 45. Now there's 45. That was the question.
No, okay.
Now there's
What
45.
the clerk said is in
Blacked
her
out.
previous position, there had been about 10 less, so there would have been about 35
When she
before.
worked in the-
When she worked 2018, and now it's 45, so 10 more.
Yeah, 10 more.
I didn't recall on the tip of my tongue that she did work for the treasurer's office for a long time. Under John Riley.
Yeah.
I'd like
Any
to make
other
one more
questions?
statement, sir, if I can. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands. It's not wrong to have bank accounts. It's not illegal to have so many. It's a matter of efficiency and a matter of cost. So we're not looking to fix a thing that you're doing incorrectly by any rule or law. It is purely an issue of making the city run more efficiently and save money.
Okay.
Good point.
Any other questions for Brian? Okay, anybody in the audience with
Just a quick
questions?
question.
Bud, Council.
You know any cities that have one bank account?
No, I'm trying, I believe I've seen 3. I think that's the smallest number, but it would be like a checking, a savings, and a tax account.
No, I just counted 56 over here.
Because you have your pool accounts too, right? I don't know if you guys counted those.
With the pool account, 56.
Last question.
Go ahead.
Brian, last question. Number one, do you know any other city, not Dearborn Heights, that has more than 10 bank accounts open?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's name one.
I'm not going to name my
Like
clients.
City of Livonia, where I worked before. City of Livonia?
I don't know how many Livonia has.
All right, no, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. I can tell you, though, that one of my clients, a village in Monroe County,
Somewhere where it's not, they're not a Plant Moran client or they're Plant Moran voice.
unless I know for a fact, I'm not going to mention any, but
Councilman, he told you it's 5 to 10.
Sault
is
Ste.
ideal.
Marie, for example.
I don't have any idea.
Right, all
I
right.
don't work with Sault Ste. Marie.
Any other questions from council members?
No, sir. And second,
Mariana, you had something to say? Oh, okay. Anybody else in the audience? And lastly, anybody on Zoom that has any questions?
Rachel LaPointe on.
Rachel, go ahead.
She gets 2 minutes?
No, on this one, we don't time it. It's strictly 3 minutes is fine. It's on. Go ahead, Rachel.
Let me try it again. There's.
Hey, guys. Rachel LaPointe, Merrick Street, Dearborn Heights. I don't really have any comments about the audit or the disclosure at this time. Great job, guys. But I do have a comment that you guys hit 180 lags and dropouts in the Zoom call on the resident side of things. So just so you guys know, I was tracking that and hit 180. So
You just dropped out.
yeah.
Make it 181.
Okay. Rachel, you all set?
Hello?
Going once, twice?
Oh, she muted herself.
So for those in the audience, unfortunately, this is something we've been very familiar with, and our IT director is continuing to work on this between himself and the Zoom people. So beyond our personal control, but it is on the radar. Anybody else on Zoom that has any questions? All right, one last question from Councilman
Well,
Constant.
no, I'm going to wait till the very end, and I probably won't have to ask you.
Okay.
Keep going.
Mariana, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm just waiting for public comment. But if it's okay with you, I would
Yeah,
like to make an
absolutely.
announcement. As I've been talking to all of you for the last couple of weeks, we have our American Rescue Plan Act public forums. We now have a flyer. The meetings are going to be on February 15th at 10 a.m. It's going to be here in the council chambers. And at 6 p.m., we're going to do it at the Justice Center to try to accommodate for different groups in our city. Again, there is a little QR code in the flyer for people to go in and fill out the surveys. We want to make sure that we're hearing the residents' opinion with what we can do with the $24 million that we received with American Rescue Plan Act funds. This is going to be a good meeting for everyone to come get educated and see where the results are at that point with regards to those surveys. So please help us share the word and invite as many residents as you can
So
to
it's one session,
participate.
2 different times, or?
It's
session
2
once?
sessions where we're going to do the same thing. We're
Same
just
thing.
trying to accommodate more people,
So they can
depending
just-
on their schedules.
Right, and for those in the audience or on Zoom that are not familiar, ARPA money is the money that we received in federal funds because of the COVID. About approximately 2 million of it has already been used by the city, but we have an additional 22 million available for us to use. If I'm not mistaken, by the end of the year next year, is that correct?
No.
I thought it was a deadline, time deadline.
We have to allocate it by 2024, but we have until 2026 to spend the
To
money.
actually use it. Okay,
Yeah.
so 2024 was to allocate it only. Okay. Thank you, Mariana. Councilman, go ahead.
Thank you. And one last statement for Mariana and for Brian and for our new comptroller. Our current treasurer made the statement that it wasn't in the last calendar year that she had secured, these were the exact words she used, and I'm not going to mention her name. She had secured $24 million. And then number two, I'm pretty sure at that time, when she made it, all that whole amount should have been deposited in our bank account, and I'm positive that at that time, none of the ARA money was in fact deposited. Does that make sense?
I don't recall that statement, so I'm not going to state.
I mean, just if you understand the
But
significance.
any money that comes in
of what I
is
just said,
obviously instantly
anybody.
deposited. So yes, it is deposited. It's not cash, it's wire.
No, but when the statement was made, that's hereby, I choose my words carefully. Understand that on December 31st, 2020, our current treasurer was our current treasurer. And at that time, when that statement was made, I know for a fact it was not correct. But just the wording she used, which was during a council meeting, that she had secured $24 million.
Council Chair, may I offer some clarification? I don't know about the statement or when it was made, but the ARPA fund disbursements happened in two occasions. We received 12 million in July of 2021, and we received the other 12 million in July of 2022. If you look at the monthly treasurer report, the first account there, it's a separate bank account for your ARPA revenues. There's $22,114,463. As you know, during the budget season, you authorized for about $2.5 million to be moved back to the general fund as part of our revenue loss allocations. There will be a little bit more of that revenue loss allocation coming your way in the next budget season, and of course during the public hearings where we're going to try to explain some of those items as well.
Okay, and just to clarify for the audience, there is conditions as to what that money can be used for, so it's not open-ended as far as what different cities can use it for, just to clarify. Okay, any other questions from audience, council members?
The money. It was actually the money was sent, the ARPA money.
Not at all. Just assume that I know when our current treasurer took office, right? Because I was the opponent, right? And assume that statement was made the day after she took office. The day after and that statement was not, as stated, correct, the way she stated it. That would make people think, our taxpayers believe that she had actually secured that money and deposited it in the bank.
Councilman, we can't make this political, just to be fair.
As our council chair indicated, it's all money today, it's by wire transfer.
Councilman, now we're going after somebody, so we don't want to make it about that.
We don't want to make any political
All
statements.
right, any other
How's it
comments?
political? It's a statement of fact.
I know, but that's not a personal thing, so. Okay, anything else from the audience or on Zoom? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead, move to adjourn.
Support.
Thank you, everyone.